Welcome. It is Mitch. I'm on YouTube. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channels. We try to build it up. Always appreciate all the support. We've had coordinators, position coaches for the Packers speak the last couple of weeks as they go through some of these early phases of the offseason programs. And a lot of it's coach speak. A lot of it's stuff that you can try to pry things out of your OC, your DC, your head coach, across the league. And you're going to get coach speak. You're going to get typical answers that you would normally expect, nothing out of the blue. Adam Stenavich, offensive coordinator for the Green Bay Packers. Let me preface by saying, we love Stenavich, right? Your OC, everyone, I don't think anyone in Packerland has a gripe with Adam Stenavich as the OC. Stenavich was at the podium a week ago, somewhere around there. And I wanted to do this video last week, but I was kind of sitting on it and letting it marinate a little bit. And just, it still baffles me and it still puzzles me, something that I'm just not buying into. And to me, it could be a case where, if the Packers did this with the wrong player, you're flying really, really close to the sun. And Stenavich last week at the podium was talking about the offensive line specifically. And he said, and I quote, this is Packers offensive coordinator Adam Stenavich last week. And you could tell it surprised people in the media room because there were follow-up questions after it. Stenavich talking about the offensive line said, and I quote, "We're going to have a lot of competition there at both tackle positions with trying to find who our best five guys are." And I'm sitting back and I'm thinking, both? Let's start with left tackle. It's already been announced as an open competition. Matt LaFleur has already said it this offseason. Rasheed Walker, the 2-year starter, former 7th-round pick, entering a contract year, will be duking it out with Jordan Morgan, first-round pick out of Arizona a year ago for the starting left tackle spot in training camp. But right tackle? Zach Tom. The same Zach Tom that Packer fans have been praising, the same Zach Tom that I've said often in videos, he's in a contract year, and you would think at some point as the Packers prioritize the rest of their offseason, getting an extension done with Zach Tom that will likely make him either in that first or second tier of top-paid tackles in the NFL. You would expect that to get done. I don't think you want Zach Tom entering a contract year and then entering free agency next offseason if he puts together another solid season like we would all expect him to, because then you're going to have funny money coming his way from other teams who have more cap space than you do if you're the Green Bay Packers. So you would assume they'd get something done with Tom this offseason. Then Stenavich last week says, we're going to have a lot of competition at both tackle positions. And you're thinking, did he just misspeak? Was it the wrong wordage? And he, seemingly doubled down later in the presser. Stenavich said, again, and I quote, "However it shakes out," this is Stanavich's words. These are Stanavich's words. "However it shakes out, tackle, right tackle, obviously right guard. There's a lot of good competition. The guys we've added, plus the guys getting older and getting more experience. It's going to be really interesting to see how this all shakes out." And I'm like, I don't think I'm drinking the Zach Tom Kool-Aid. He was a really damn good tackle. He's a really good offensive lineman, right? If you talk, the Packers had a pretty good offensive line last year, right? Above league average. And Zach Tom, to me, was the best of the bunch. Maybe Elton Jenkins, if you want to have that conversation, sure. Sean Ryan was formidable. Rasheed Walker was good. Josh Myers at center. But it's either Tom or Elton Jenkins. And so I was like, this just feels odd. It feels forced. And then you go back to Matt LaFleur, since he's taken over as head coach, he's always had this motto and this terminology of competition and open competitions. And it's good for the team, and it's good for the competition, and competing for starting spots is a good thing for the team. It raises the expectations, it kind of raises the energy and some of that angst, which can be good. And I get that. And LaFleur already coming out this offseason and saying Rasheed Walker, Jordan Morgan are going to have an open competition for the starting gig at left tackle. Perfectly fine, but right tackle with Zach Tom, I didn't like it. It rubbed me the wrong way a little bit. And Pro Football Focus, PFF, right, folks? It's not the be-all, end-all. It isn't. But their numbers, some take it as the gospel a little too far. I buy into it to a certain extent. Pro Football Focus, out of 140 qualified tackles last year, again, 140 qualified tackles in the NFL, Zach Tom was their fourth highest rated or graded offensive tackle, fourth in the NFL out of 140 that qualified. And this isn't a guy who missed some time in and out of lineup. Zach Tom played 98% of the snaps on offense. He was there every single week, started every single game. 98% of the snaps on offense. PFF graded him as the fourth best tackle out of 140 in the National Football League. Had his highest, the funny thing is, Zach Tom in the offseason, right after the season concluded, he said there was a lot of good for him individually last season, but some bad mixed in there and things he wants to work out. Like, this is a dude who he's constantly grinding to try to get better and better and better, and that's what you want. But he had his career high in pass blocking grade, career high in run blocking grade, and career high in overall grade, according to PFF. And Green Bay coming out now and saying, like, oh, it's going to be a competition at right tackle. Like, with who? Like, Morgan's at left tackle. I know you drafted Anthony Belton, who's a tackle, but my thought was you drafted Belton in the second round out of North Carolina State to perhaps compete with Sean Ryan at right guard for that gig in 2025. And once 2026 rolls around, I said in a previous video a few weeks ago, I think Green Bay's ideal left to right starting five would be Jordan Morgan at left tackle, Banks at left guard, Elton Jenkins at center, Belton at right guard, and then Zach Tom at right tackle. But to even, like, I'm not buying into what Stenavich is saying about open competition at right tackle. But again, I think, like, if you do it with the wrong player, it can ruffle some feathers. And I'm not suggesting like that Zach Tom needs to be coddled or anything like that. To me, it just kind of feels lame. Like, if you're going to say Zach Tom, who was one of your better players overall in 2024, is now all of a sudden in a competition to keep his starting spot, why not just say, hey, Jordan Love and Malik Willis are also duking it out in training camp? Like, did anyone listen to Stenavich's words? And again, we love Steno, but did anyone listen to those words when he said it was going to be a competition at right tackle and, like, buy that stock? Like, did anyone believe it? I literally heard it and I was like, there's no way I heard that right when I was watching the presser. So I went back and watched it again. But then later on, they asked him about it again, and he doubled down about the competition at right tackle. I didn't like it. I was trying to draw a comparison for Wisconsin sports fans, and I think I found a decent one. This isn't, Zach Tom's really good, but this isn't like the Milwaukee Bucks saying, in camp, like, hey, Giannis has got to earn his starting spot. But I look at a team like the Brewers, and the last 2 years in their rotation, Big Woo, Brandon Woodruff's been still out. He missed all of last year, waiting for him to turn it around this year due to an injury. And that was like your veteran presence. Corbin Burns is long gone. Last 2 years in the rotation, Milwaukee's gone with older rookies, some AAA arms, mixed and matched some free agent signings. They've tried a lot of different combinations for the rotation just to keep things afloat. The one constant, the one steadying presence is Fastball Freddie. It's Freddie Peralta. And Wisconsin sports fans will get this comparison, this analogy. It is Milwaukee and manager Pat Murphy said in spring training, like, entering this year, Freddie's got to earn a spot in the rotation. You'd be like, your rotation's being duct taped together the last 2 years. Freddie Peralta's the number one in the rotation. Like, he's your ace. Is he a number one for every team in Major League Baseball? No, but he's probably at worst like a number two. Like, Freddie Peralta's a damn good starting pitcher. What Stenavich said with Tom, like, he's going to have to, it's a competition, earn your starting spot at right tackle. It's like Pat Murphy in spring training saying, Freddie Peralta's got to earn a spot in the rotation. You'd be like, what? Like, it just, I didn't like it. I didn't. And again, I think if you did it with the wrong player, it could really ruffle some feathers. Like, part of me, and you'd never want to see this, but what if Zach Tom turned around and it kind of left a sour taste in his mouth and he was like, hey, love playing for the Packers. Yeah, I'll battle out for my, I'll battle for my starting spot this training camp, but I'm going to shut off all talks and negotiations until next offseason when I'm a free agent. Then all of a sudden you're like, shit, like, we might have said the wrong thing. Again, I don't think it's like the world is crumbling or it's some huge big deal. It was just, I didn't like it. And I get Matt LaFleur and Stenavich and Jeff Hafley now in his second year as defensive coordinator. You don't want handouts. You don't just want to give guys a starting gig. But Zach Tom is someone who's earned it. I mean, he's more than proven it over his first few years in the NFL. Again, he's become almost a premier tackle in the NFL. PFF ranking him 4th out of 140 that qualified. And he doesn't need to be babied. He doesn't need to be, have his hand held. He doesn't need to be coddled. That's not my point. Does anyone with a pulse believe that Zach Tom isn't the best option at right tackle for Green Bay? That he isn't the best offensive lineman the Packers have, and if not the best, he's clearly the second best. That's why and for him entering a contract year, it kind of makes it makes it more bizarre that they would say it. And competition is fine. It's great. You want it. But going about it this way, indirectly signaling like Tom's job isn't safe, I just use that word lame. It kind of feels lame. Like it's almost like a forced motivating tactic that you're trying to use. And they use it often, and we've heard about it, but I'm just not buying into it. Especially for a guy who doesn't seem like he needs the push. Zach Tom himself, his words were that he thought his 2024 season was a mixed bag with a lot of good. He said he thought 2024 was better than his 2023 season. Like, he's clearly a player that's ascending. I don't understand. And again, I looked at his pass blocking grade, his run blocking grade, his overall grade. They're all near the top of the totem pole league wide for offensive tackles. And so it almost just kind of feels like reckless in a sense for what Green Bay's doing. I was trying to find another quote. I think it was Jason Vrabel had said like something in the offseason about, Tom wasn't overly thrilled or something like that. I'm slightly paraphrasing. Like, he knows he can be better and fine-tune some things. And yeah, every player is going towards that. But I think we all saw Zach Tom and still see Zach Tom as a guy who was due for a hefty payday this offseason. And now all of a sudden the word is, hey, he's going to be competing for a starting spot at right tackle. It's fine to preach the competition for all if it's going to be competition for all, but that's not what's going. Like, no one's saying, hey, Marshawn Lloyd's going to be squaring up with Josh Jacobs to see who's the bell cow at running back. That's why it doesn't make sense to me. Like, I wasn't shocked when Matt LaFleur came out this offseason and said Rasheed Walker, Jordan Morgan are going to battle it out in training camp for the starting left tackle spot. To me, Rasheed Walker's been a really good starter for 2 years, but he's a 7th-round pick entering a contract year. Green Bay used a premier pick, first-rounder, last year on Jordan Morgan. Whether we think it's right or wrong, fair or not, ideally they would want their first-round pick to elevate, to ascend, to become that starting left tackle. And so it made all the sense in the world that they did that. The Zach Tom part doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't, unless you're going to announce that every position's wide open. So I think it would have just been better left unsaid, instead of noting that both tackle spots are seemingly up for grabs, because that's just not the case. I don't think anyone's buying into that. When you talk about some of the competitions that they will have on the roster, it's left tackle, it's right guard. Sean Ryan, and they were flirting with Jordan Morgan at right guard. They peppered him into the lineup during games, like during live game action last year, before a couple of injuries ended up derailing Morgan's rookie season. And so if Rasheed Walker wins the left tackle gig out of camp, do you try Jordan Morgan at right guard to battle it out with Sean Ryan? Is Belton going to be battling for the right guard spot? Maybe Belton all of a sudden is battling for the right tackle spot with Zach Tom. There will be things of that nature. The wide receiver room is littered with a bunch of really good talent. I don't think Green Bay is going to come out of training camp announcing, like, here is our true number one wide receiver. There's going to be a battle for depth chart spots at wide receiver. And I think it'll be a group that just the targets fluctuate week in and week out. 1 week you might have Matthew Golden get 7 or 8 targets, and the next it might be Romeo Doubs, and the week after that it might be Jaden Reed. There's just a lot of talent. And I said in a previous video, a couple of them, there's a lot of mouths to feed in the wide receiver room. There's going to be heavy competition at wide receiver in training camp, but I don't think you're going to emerge from it if you're the Packers anointing someone as your number one wide receiver. It's not how they've gone about business the last 2 years with this group of good wide receivers, but no one that's taken off to be a great wide receiver. So I would expect that to kind of stay the same. But left tackle, right guard, defensively, like, it sounds like Lucas Van Ness is going to get every shot. He will be the starter on one side of the edge, and the other side's obviously Rashawn Gary. Inside linebacker, you would expect it to be Quay Walker and Edgerrin Cooper. Safety's interesting because you have the X-Man who's cemented in, unless they're doing this competition for all thing across the board. But at the other spot, you would expect it to be Evan Williams, but maybe Javon Bullard's taking a big step, and maybe they want to try to push him farther away from the ball, even though he was better closer to the ball in the slot last year. That slot spot, I mean, if you have Jair Alexander back in the mix for Green Bay, that's your number one corner. and then your number 2 corner is either Hobbs or Nixon, and then your slot is left over of Nate Hobbs and Keyshawn Nixon, and Bullard's going to be in the mix there too. So there's some very, very interesting, fascinating position battles that'll unfold the rest of this summer, but I don't I don't see one being at right tackle. I don't. I was just caught way off guard by it. And then when Stenavich did clarify again, that's competition at right tackle, you're just, I was sitting there like that just, what am I missing here? It just, it didn't make sense to me. Especially for a guy who doesn't seem like he needs the motivation. He seems fine with how he's handled and carried himself through his first first few years in the National Football League. So we'll see. Again, it's not like, I'm not carrying the pitchforks or the fiery torches. I just didn't like it. I thought it was kind of lame. I'm fine with preaching competition, battle, earn your spot. But if you've earned your spot and everyone knows it, you don't really have to go out and say, it's going to be an open battle at right tackle. Like, why? Because, again, you hope that Zach Tom has the personality and the mindset where he kind of takes it head on and it, maybe gives him a little more juice. But, I don't think he needed that. The flip side of that is you just don't want to ruffle the feathers of someone who would take it the wrong way, who clearly is established and on firm ground with their starting spot. So I don't know what you guys think. Let me know. Something like absolutely catastrophic would have to occur this offseason for Zach Tom to not be, they always talk about, the Packers use the phrase best five when they talk about their offensive line. We want to find a combination that we get out there with our best 5 offensive linemen. And that's why Goody and company, the rest of the Brain Trust, they target versatility in the draft when it comes to offensive linemen. Jordan Morgan, tackle at Arizona, he can play guard. Elton Jenkins, all over the place at Mississippi State. He's played tackle, guard, now center for the Packers. Zach Tom, center, tackle at Wake Forest. That's your right tackle. Sean Ryan could play center. He was your right guard. There's just a lot of plug-and-play options. Jacob Monk, who's a reserve center guard. Belton, who you just drafted, tackle or guard. They love that versatility. They want to find the right combination to crack the code and get their best 5 out there. But in what world do we come out of training camp? Let's say every offensive lineman for the Packers, every single one, starter, backup, third stringer, everyone comes out of training camp and preseason, full go, full health. In what world is Zach Tom not one of your best 5? In what world is Zach Tom not your best option at right tackle? It's not realistic. It's not happening. So I wish they didn't kind of open up that can of worms for people to speculate. But I do think now, the secondary layer to this is what are contract extension talks, negotiations looking like? I may have been wrong. And I know, talking with some of my buddies who are Packer fans this offseason, that I talk to on a regular basis, we all assumed the Zach Tom situation with him entering a contract year, it was like a foregone conclusion. They're going to do everything they can to ink a deal, get something done this offseason. The last thing you want if you're the Packers, well, not the last thing, it wouldn't be ideal, I'll say, if Zach Tom has another all-pro caliber season and then enters free agency, because, again, that term, people are going to start throwing funny money. People that have tons of cap space next offseason, they'll be like, this is a pillar of the offensive line. We're talking about an all-pro caliber tackle that's now a free agent hitting the market. Yeah, we'll overpay, and Green Bay might not have that flexibility. And so I, along with others, thought almost a foregone conclusion, the Packers are going to try to hammer something out with Zach Tom this offseason, right? You don't want him hitting the market. You don't want him playing out a contract year. And for Zach Tom, it makes sense because you want that financial security, that financial stability, because, heaven forbid, what if he had Christian Watson tore his ACL week 18 against Chicago? He's now entering a contract year. What if Zach Tom had an injury in season? It's going to affect your future earnings. And so for Zach Tom to lock something up with the Packers, it just makes too much sense for both sides. That's why I just don't get it. And plus, you're talking about a guy who's still ascending, fourth out of 140. What am I missing here? And again, PFF is not, the Bible for football, but it's a good measuring stick for certain instances. And just because they had him ranked 4th out of 140 doesn't mean everyone else had Zach Tom ranked 4th out of 140. But is there anyone on this planet that I'll stretch it out to top 12. Is there anyone on this planet who wouldn't say Zach Tom's like a top 12 tackle in the NFL? And I think he's far better than that, but that's why, what are we talking about? Open competition at right tackle. I didn't like it. I didn't. I thought it was kind of cheesy, kind of lame, but we'll see. It does make me question contract talks and how those are shaping up, or if they've even started to kick the can on those conversations or get the ball rolling with Zach Tom. We'll see. Let me know what you think. Zach Tom's your starting right tackle. Open competition, my ass. I don't see it playing out that way. I just don't. Mitch, I'm on YouTube. Always appreciate all the support. We'll see you next time.